Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, then welcome. My name is Maddie, and today I will be sharing my top 10 favorite books of 2018. So I think it's been about a month since I last uploaded. I don't have a good excuse as to why I've been gone. It's just life just happens, and some things are just out of my control, and I couldn't upload on time, but I am glad to be back. And it is that season, in fact past that season, where everyone starts sharing their top favorite books of 2018, the worst books of 2018, and I am so late on this, so I'm finally getting this out there. This is a video that I look forward to doing at the end of every single year. I really love looking back at the books I read that year and seeing which ones were my favorites. And I will be sharing these in order from my least most favorite book to my most favorite book of 2018. But first, I'm going to share my honorable mentions. These are the books that didn't make the list, but they were still such great books that I just had to mention them. So let's get into those. The first one is The Vampire's Assistant by Darren Shan, Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, Don't Look Back by Jennifer L. Armentrout, The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw, Here We Are Now by Jasmine Warga, A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard, and Stolen by Lucy Christopher. So now let's do the official top 10. Coming in at number 10 is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the novella, the most recent release of the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which I've mentioned so many times, one of my favorite series. Unfortunately, this was not my favorite book in the series, but I kind of expected that because usually novellas aren't always amazing to me, or they're not my favorite book in the series, but I really enjoyed this novella. I still gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. This one didn't have a whole lot of action in it like the other books in the series, but what I loved about it is that we just got to see these characters just interact with each other and just have a good time. These characters have been through so much in the previous books that it was kind of nice to see them unwind and just act like a family together. So this one was short, it was sweet, but if you haven't read it yet, I would recommend it, even though it definitely is not the best book in the series. I'd still recommend to go for it in case you've been thinking about it, because I know this was a very polarizing novella, but I personally really liked it. And coming in at number 9 is Wildcard by Marie Lu. This is the second book to the Warcross duology. Warcross was my second favorite book of 2017. So I was really looking forward to this final book in the series, and it did not disappoint. I love this book. If you guys don't know what this duology is about, short summary of it, it's about this world where virtual reality exists, and along with that comes a virtual reality game called Warcross that is super popular, and the maker of Warcross hires a girl named Amika to come to Japan to track down someone who is trying to ruin the game of Warcross. It is a sci-fi duology, and I'm someone who really does not like sci-fi, but I love this series so much. The characters are great, the world is so interesting, the game of Warcross is so intricate, and what I liked about the second book, Wildcard, we got to see the characters grow more. And something I did not expect from this book is how dark of a turn it took. The first book was pretty light and fluffy for the most part. There were still a lot of intense scenes in the first book, but Wildcard took that to a whole new level that I wasn't expecting, but I absolutely loved. I really love books that take on dark themes or undertones, so that was something I was really into in the sequel. Great series. I know a lot of people have read it, which makes me so happy, but if you haven't yet, definitely do. I mean, even if you don't like science fiction. I don't like science fiction, but I love these books, so I would recommend you try it out anyway. Number 8 is a book that I read right before 2018 ended, and it took me by surprise. That is Paper Princess by Erin Watt. As of now, I have completely finished this series because I could not put these books down. This is a series that I did not expect to love because honestly, these books are complete trash. They are so ridiculous, so unrealistic, but they are so good and they're so addictive. Paper Princess is about a girl who is a stripper, so she's stripping because she lives on her own. Her mom died and she needs to make money. But then this guy who was her dad's friend comes to her and says he wants her to live with him, like he'll take care of her. So she goes to his house. He is super rich, so she's like in a mansion, and he also has 5 brothers. So it's all about her interacting with these brothers who absolutely despise her and her journey with that. This is a new adult series, but the characters are teenagers, but it reads like a new adult book. It tackles very explicit and dark, mature content, so that's why I would call it new adult. But the thing is that it's a new adult book about teenagers, and I've never read anything like that, and I really like that. And the series just gets better and better and better. Each book leaves off on a cliffhanger that makes you have to pick up the next book. That's why I went through this series so quickly, and it is just a non-stop ride of just drama, angst, angsty romance, so much angst, but it is so great. It's definitely a book that not everyone will love, but I'd still recommend to try it out, especially if you're into new adult. I guess if you want to get more mature content while still reading about teenagers, this is a good one, because I've never read any other book like this that has teenagers that handle such mature content, but I want to see more of that. Coming in at number 7 is my first Jennifer L. Armentrout book on this list. You betcha there's going to be a lot, because she's my favorite author, and that is Obsidian. I finally got to the Lux series in 2018, and I have now finished the series, finally, and I will get to my thoughts on the last few books in my January wrap-up. I love this series so much. This is another series that's kind of trashy. It's very cliche. It's a very typical paranormal romance, but it is still so good. This series is about a girl who moves to a new town and finds out that her next door neighbors are aliens, and she kind of falls for the guy alien in the family. And it's a very action-packed series with such a great romance. Follows the hate to love romance trope, which is one of my favorite tropes. This has quickly become one of my favorite series. I never wanted it to end. The last book for sure is my favorite of the series. It ended so well, which I mentioned I'll talk about the last book in my January wrap-up. But talking about Obsidian in particular, the first book was great. It really drew me in. It was very interesting, even though it is a typical paranormal romance. It's basically Twilight, but with aliens, but it is better than Twilight. So I would definitely recommend to check this one out. It is so great, and Damon is one of my favorite characters ever. He's one of my fictional crushes because I just love him to death. At number 6 is Scorched by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the second book to the Frigid duology, so this is a companion series, but I like Scorched way better than the first book. This book was really sad. It takes on a lot of touchy subjects that have to do with mental illness and addiction, and I think that's one reason why I really loved it. As I mentioned so many times, I really love reading books that tackle very touchy subjects that are kind of depressing. I just like seeing characters go through that in their adventure trying to get through those types of situations, so that's why I really love this book. This one tackles another hate to love relationship, which I swooned over. I really love the romance in this book. It was done so well. It definitely did make me cry a few times because of what the main character has to go through, but I will leave it at that. So if you guys want to read this book, you can find out her journey by yourself, because this is the kind of book that you really shouldn't talk too much about because it might spoil something, so I will leave it at that, but it is great. Again, the first book is called Frigid, which is a great one, but not as great as Scorched. But if you want to check those out, you definitely should, especially if you are into new adult books. At number 5 is If There's No Tomorrow by Jennifer L. Armentrout. That's another JLA book, and this is the last book on the list. And yet another book that I can't talk too much about because the whole plot is just one big spoiler, but I will give you kind of the gist of it. It is about this girl named Lena who has her whole life pretty much put together and planned out. She has a bright future ahead of her. She plans to go to college, so she's very excited for her future. Something happens that kind of ruins everything. In all our plans, her whole life goes downhill. But I can't tell you what it is because it is a spoiler. I will say, don't expect to be super happy all the time reading this book because it definitely is really depressing for the most part, but there are some really great happy moments in it. I really love the romance in this book. It starts off really rocky because of what happened, but the way it's developed is just so well done. And I think it's been a little over a year since I last read this book, and I definitely want to reread it again. I want to do that really soon because I just remembered absolutely loving this one so much, almost as much as I love The Prom with Forever by the same author. Almost. The Prom with Forever is still way up there. At number 4 is another book that took me by surprise, and that is The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. This one takes place in a world where vampires exist, and the vampires have kind of caused an epidemic by transforming people into vampires. So to control this society has built these towns called Coldtowns where they keep the vampires isolated from humans so that they stop transforming people. So this book follows this girl named Tana, and her ex-boyfriend has been transformed into a vampire, so she is traveling to Coldtown where the vampires can hopefully fix him. The reason this book is so polarizing is because a lot of people think it's really slow-paced. It kind of is in the middle, but the book is so action-packed at the beginning of the story that the slow pace kind of gives you more time to really get to know the characters, and that's why I didn't really mind the slow pacing at all, because there still were interesting characters that we were getting to know. So that's the reason why I really didn't have as much as a problem with this book. I would recommend to give it a try, especially if you love paranormal books. This one's super fun, the characters are really easy to fall in love with, and this book has definitely made me want to pick up more of Holly Black's books because I really enjoyed her writing in this book, and I still have yet to pick up a book by her. Need to get on that, but I really loved this one. We have a little visitor right here. Can you guys see him? This is my cat. This is Cody. He's like wanting some love. There he is. He's purring and he never purrs. Aw. You sweetie. Back to the list. We are getting into my top 3. So let's get into it. At number 3 is another book that I read at the very, very end of the year in December, and that is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I decided to pick this one up pretty much on a whim because I had been hearing so many amazing things about it that I was like, okay, I have to pick this book up right now. And I finally did, and I loved it. The hype is real for this one. This book is about a woman who is a famous actress, and she asks this reporter to interview her so that she can write a biography on her life story. So this book is basically showing the life of Evelyn Hugo and the mistakes she made, the people she fell in love with, and all of her 7 husbands. It is so interesting. Evelyn Hugo is one of the most fascinating characters I have ever read about, and I love her so much that I really wish she was a real person who was like a real actress. I feel like if she was actually real, I would have really, really fallen in love with her. Like, I would have seen her movies. She's just so great, so complex. She's done pretty terrible things, but you still really care for her and you really want to hear her experiences. This one is a bit of a historical fiction mixed in with modern contemporary fiction, since it takes place in the present where Evelyn is telling her story to this journalist, and also shows you flashbacks of her past during her acting career. It is super interesting, really, really well written. I just loved it to death, and again, definitely really lives up to the hype. And coming in second place is a book that I read at the beginning of the year that I really thought was going to be my number 1 book of 2018 until another book came along that I loved even more, but this one was fantastic. It gave me so many feels. That is Far From the Tree by Robin Benway. I've talked about this book a bit throughout the year because I really enjoyed it and I constantly recommend it. If you guys have not heard about this book, it is a book about these 3 siblings who were all adopted, so they have never met each other. They are now in their teens, but they don't know each other exists until they come to find out that they do exist. So they meet up and they get to know each other. They come to fall in love with each other. This one is a book all about sibling love. One thing I absolutely adore reading about is family dynamics, and the family in this one is just incredible, especially since you get to see these siblings come to love each other and form such a strong bond. It's just so beautiful, and not only that, aside from the way we see these siblings come together, each of these siblings each have their own life story that we get to know about, since this is a book that comes with each of their perspectives, and they all have their individual problems that are really heartbreaking since they had to grow up in the adoption system without really knowing their real family. So it's very interesting in that way, and I really don't think this book gives enough attention. It deserves so much more, so I would definitely recommend to check it out. It probably will make you cry because this book made me sob, literally sob towards the end of it. And I don't cry super easily with books, but this one, it just waterworks streaming down my face at the end of this book. That's how much it really hit me, and I just love it so much. Now we are at number 1, my favorite book of 2018. I know I've mentioned that this book is probably going to be my favorite. It's going to be the number 1 pick on my top 10 books of 2018 because I adore this book. And that is The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci. Another one I did not expect to love. This one certainly was a surprise, and that's because it is an adult dark fantasy. I read adult romance, but adult fantasy is something I've never ventured in, so I didn't know what I was going to think of this book, but I was taken by surprise because I love this book. The Savior's Champion is about this world that takes place in a fantasy world, as I mentioned. And in this world, there is the Savior, who is a woman who her very existence is to purify the land. So she was very important. And there was a tournament that takes place where a bunch of men compete to the death and the winner gets to marry the Savior. So it's basically the Hunger Games meets the Bachelorette. That's how I always describe this book because it is exactly like that. And this book follows our main character, Tobias, who doesn't want to compete in this Sovereign's tournament, but he really needs to because his family is super poor, and if you become the winner, then you become super rich. So he does it to help his family and his sister, who is also disabled, so he thinks the money will really help her. And he competes to the death to marry the Savior. It is really gory. A lot of deaths happen, obviously, because this is a fight to the death tournament. A lot of action, a fantastic romance. This book really focuses heavily on the romance since it is a fight to the death in order to marry the Savior. So there's obviously going to be a romance in there, so the romance was really present. What I really loved about this relationship that Tobias has with his love interest is that it is so healthy, it's so consensual, and that's something you don't really see a lot in new adult and adult books, is very healthy relationships. So that was really refreshing. I really felt for this romance because of that. And this is a book that I could not put down. It is so well paced. I never wanted to put it down, and when I had to put it down, I would go to bed because I'd be like, oh man, it is super late. I need to go to bed. So I'm like, reluctantly put the book down, but then I would not stop thinking about the book, and I'd be like, screw it. I'm just going to stay up all night reading it. And that's what I did, and I finished this book, this 500-page book, in 2 days. And I never read a book that long in 2 days. Usually it would take me close to a week, but I flew through this book. Could not recommend it enough. Definitely check it out. It is a self-published book, so this can be a way you can support your self-published authors because self-published authors need the support and love too. And I cannot wait for the second book coming out in 2019. It should be coming out soon, I think. Have not heard any news on it, but I cannot wait. Oh, it's one of my anticipated books this year. And I will definitely be rereading this one before the second book comes out, and I'm so excited to reread it because I love this book so much. It was fantastic. Those were my top 10 favorite books of 2018. All great books. I really did read so many great books in 2018. I only had 5 books that I really didn't like this year that I will be talking about in my worst books of 2018 that will be coming out tomorrow. So you can be on the lookout for that if you are interested. And with that said, I guess I am going to end the video here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos. And also be sure to follow me on Twitter because I post a lot on there. And if you want to hear more from me outside of YouTube, you should check me out there. I post every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Hopefully I will be going back to my schedule because I planned for it. I won't be taking a break anytime soon. Cross my fingers. So I will see you guys really soon. Bye!